Welcome to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka from our studios here in London. Coming up on today's show, the emergence and adoption of digital technologies is changing the retail landscape across all industries, with the used car market being no exception. According to a recent report from Deloitte, Africa's automotive industry is gradually breaking away from traditional sales models, and AutoCheck has recently partnered with the Association of Motor Dealers of Nigeria to allow car buyers in the country to access everything they need to purchase a car through their smartphone. The CEO and founder of the firm Etop Ikpe joins me now from Lagos. Etop Ikpe, thank you so much for joining me on Channel's Business Global. It's a pleasure to be talking to you again. So COVID-19, it's accelerated the digital push in several industries. How has it been taking place across the used car sales business in Africa?
Thank you very much for having me again. I think that COVID-19, as you know, across several businesses, it's really forced the agenda for digitization, for remote work, for remote interviews like what we're having now. I think this has really become the norm. So on one end, I think if you think about it, right, a lot of the tools that we're using pretty much were existent a long time ago. Zoom in itself has existed for over 10 years. We've always had Google Hangouts. Skype has been present. And what it did was it forced us to recognize that we could do things in another way, right? Because typically the world had been designed around probably about 150 years of a working culture driven from industrialization. And basically we're now moving to a very fast stage of digitization. So I think if you look at that overall and you apply that to so we're not seeing anything that I think is strange or negative. I think it's actually positive because it's made people much more effective. We have a much more better way of handling our operational cost as well. I think in the automotive sector, what is basically also driven is the importance of digitization in the automotive sector. So particularly for AutoCheck, we are focused on digital approvals and applications of loans by consumers. We're trying to drive accessibility and affordability for customers. So it works 100% in our favor because we're finding banks able to scale up their auto lending portfolios, dealerships can build their businesses, consumers can access loans, all from all remotely. And that's basically why our technology is doing so well, and we've seen such a great reception from the market. So I think in general, this is just the beginning of the wave in terms of digitization, but I think it's all positive, and there's so many benefits that are going to come out from this, especially with technology companies.
Absolutely, it is all positive, and I think sometimes some societies can take for granted just how easy it is to do everything online. I'm sitting here in London. I think for most of our viewers that are in London or in America, you usually do buy a car online, surely. Of course, you're going to take it for that test run, but you buy it online. If you are doing like a hire purchase or a car leasing system, that's all done online. In practical steps, can you just explain how in Nigeria, for example, you can use an ecosystem like AutoCheck and others to purchase a vehicle?
Yeah, I think there's been a rapid adoption over time. So I think the typical first digitization process for car purchases came through classifieds, where you would find classifieds businesses. Typically, people would list their cars independently, and anyone could go there and call. I think that's the first wave of digitization. And then you then started to see transactional market people are typically doing a bit more in terms of inspection reports, ensuring that the cars are verified. And for AutoCheck, we really moved the entire process into the future, where the biggest issue we find in the market is not necessarily verification of cars or availability, but it's actually access to finance. If you look at economies like we're talking about, you're talking about a 65 to 70% average in terms of access of institutional finance towards automotive transactions. If you look at Sub-Saharan Africa, for instance, it's less than 2% credit penetration in automotive transactions. So fundamentally, the market that we're seeing is false because there's so much opportunity that come through access to credit. And that's what we basically focused on, which is what we call the new wave and a new way to do things. So that's how we're basically focused, ensuring that people can access auto loans, can buy their cars through auto loans effectively, 100% digitally, making applications online. The banks can receive applications 100% digitally. The banks can make approvals online. Dealers also have our software and use it to track when people are making applications online. And I can also focus on ensuring that people get their cars delivered. So that's how we're typically focusing on ecosystem. But I think in general, there's been a large wave of digitization across the board. I think where you still find issues are around trust and verification, but there are a lot of platforms doing things to improve this. And I think that there's only one way forward in terms of automotive purchases, and that is through digitization.
Absolutely. Deloitte just said that in their recent report. You may or may not know, Etop, but inflation is a major topic of discussion across global business at the moment. It's high in the UK. It's also very, very high in America. That's obviously because there was so much pent-up demand. Now everybody's free. They want to start spending again. But one of the main reasons that's been cited, particularly in America, is buying used cars. It's a huge market at the moment. What's it like in Nigeria?
I think first of all, the upward trend in demand for used cars really it's a COVID-driven situation where a lot more people are more concerned about their health and are looking to rely. I mean, if you think about these markets, a lot of people were reliant on public transportation, but a lot of people are, because of the COVID situation, a lot of people are rapidly migrating towards more personalized forms of transport. Now, what this technically means is that that's what's driving the demand overall. And 95% of the cars that Sub-Saharan Africa is reliant on emanate from the US, Europe, Asia, right? So we're seeing that demand, and we're seeing typically that demand that is being driven, and we're seeing that reflect in the market. So coupled with the fact that already with COVID also impacting Sub-Saharan Africa, there's also a demand as well and a surge for used cars. But this is coming off the fact that, the prices have already increased internationally, and we're seeing that effect because the market is largely import driven. So what then happens as well, especially with recently fluctuating FX prices, is that there's definitely a higher price in terms of what people have to pay for cars. And this is why access to credit becomes so important, because affordability then becomes an issue. We're competing globally. We're seeing that the markets are connected. We're seeing what COVID has done. This is really where this is really a time where it's so important to fix the issues that are associated with ensuring that people can get affordable and accessible credit for auto financing. If you look at the average GDP per capita, like I mentioned, is $1,250 in Sub-Saharan Africa. Average price of a car is $5,000. So if you look at that, right, you realize that if there's anywhere where access to credit is so important for automotive finance, it's in Sub-Saharan Africa. And this is why we're primarily focused on ensuring that we solve this problem. We're supporting financial institutions to scale up the automotive lending process and ensuring that dealers are also extremely happy with our business model.
Absolutely. Freedom of movement and mobility is so vital to a post-pandemic recovery, isn't it? And surely AutoCheck are at the forefront of that digital revolution. So thank you, Etop Ikpe, CEO of AutoCheck. Thanks for joining me on the show.